I know what it feels like to stand there with a loaded gun to your head, with your finger on the trigger, taking out the slack. Like I've been there. At this stage, as my mother passed away, a serious girlfriend I was dating, we broke up. And I just reached that point where I made the decision of I'm either going all in or I'm going all out. I can't stay in this middle ground any longer. And because I know that no amount of physical goods is going to help me, get past this. Is I've got to make a serious change in my life.
Dawson, talk to me about what most people have wrong when it comes to this concept of surrendering, or in your language, the strength that we find in surrender.
Yeah, that's that. I love that you start off with that, just hitting right to the meat and potatoes of it. Is, strength and surrender is, we're trying to create a juxtaposition, because you have that traditional connotation of strength and surrender. And normally you don't see those two, mixed in together. And like when I was coming up, it was always, victory or death, and there's no surrender and, all this kind of stuff. But what I found was, I'm in my mid 40s now. And before I kind of went on this transition I've been on the past couple of years, is I spent 40 years fighting everything. Everything just looked like a target. Everything looked like it was something that was attacking me. And I would just run into whomever or whatever was in front of me, just time and time again, until one of us broke. And I'm like, it can't be me that breaks, because this is a life or death situation, is what everything felt like to me. And so much of my self-worth and my value and my ability to be worthy of love was based on my ability to perform. So I was just in this ultra attack mode all the time. And I can just tell you, from doing that literally for 4 decades, it wears you down. It's, and on top of that, it's just not the right approach. And then several years ago, around 2017, when I kind of started to make all these big changes in my life and transition to the road I'm on now, what I found was it's a matter of how we understand strength and different dynamic. And the greatest strength that I've been able to exhibit since that time is to surrender into, not to, but to surrender into the issues and the challenges and the complications in my life. And it's important to understand what surrender is and what it's not. Surrender in this concept is not giving up or giving in or just going along, but rather it's moving towards your most challenging, issues or problems or complications, where they are, allowing them to come into you and to experience them to their absolute fullest, and not to fight them. Because when you fight it, you feed it. And by doing that, you understand why you're facing what you're facing and why it's having these impacts that it's having on you. Again, whether it's, you and I talked about before the show, whether it's, porn or drugs and alcohol, negative self-talk, problems with food, problems with relationships, whatever it is. But the most important part of this is, once you've experienced and understand why these things are having these impacts on you, is allowing yourself to release them without them moving you or taking root within you. Remain unmoved by them. And listen, man, I've had a chance to do some cool things in my life. I've been to the top of the world. I've been to the bottom of the world. I've been across oceans and deserts and all this crap. And I'm telling you, the hardest thing I've ever done is to sit quietly with myself and to surrender into these emotions, into these things that I face, and then to release them and try to move past them without them moving me. And that's something that continues to challenge me on a daily basis. And it's just, we have to get out of this connotation of what strength is, and the potential insecurities or fears of surrendering into something in order to experience it and to feel it. I'm sorry for the long-winded start there, but
no, brother, that's spot on, man. I mean, that gives us a lot to really kind of unpack. Rob is going to get into your story here a little bit. I mean, do you in your experience or just your opinion, like, do you feel most guys have a misunderstanding of that definition that you just shared there with surrender?
Oh, 100%, man. Is one of the biggest challenges men have, I think men have had forever, because the typical roles that we play in most societies, but especially today, is this perception of strength and weakness, and what is masculinity and potentially what is toxic masculinity, where I think that's been taken way too far, lately. And it's growing up, as I thought, to be strong is that you had to be hard and you had to do things alone, and you had to be, it was just, you're always living in this like warrior mindset. But there's a way to do that has fluidity. Because when you look at real, true, successful warriors throughout time, it's not just a single approach of I'm this one thing all the time. there's very much a fluidity behind what they do. Like if you look at, the 5 rings, or you look at the art of war, you look at all these things, there's a fluidity. I know I keep saying that word, but that's the important part is there's a time to be ultra traditionally hard where you just shut up. Whatever's in front of you, I feel sorry for it because I'm about to rip that thing a new asshole. And I mean, I'm not going to stop until one of us is dead, kind of things. But that's not the approach all the time. And what I found is on a lot of the things that I've done, it's you got to sit back and kind of reserve that strength, kind of keep it in reserve and apply it in the right ways at the right times, whether it be, physical challenges or challenges in everyday life or challenges in managing my emotions and my feelings or challenges in managing relationships.
Yeah, I love that, man. And that's what I love about your message here and the work that we're doing in this entire conversation is, there's been this, in my opinion, two different sides, right? You're either strong, as you're talking about here, the strength, the physical development, kind of that masculine energy, or the opposite is you fully surrender and you're kind of like out of control. So it's almost, it almost presents this kind of victim state mentality, right? Like if I surrender, then I pass off control. Over here is full ownership. Then here it's the victimhood. So it's like where you're saying it's like, no, it's the fluidity. It's a combination of both that strength, but also that surrender. I just was sharing with you before we talked, I was in Scottsdale last week. I was attending a business event. And then the third and final day, like we did this hike up the top of Tom's Thumb. And then we did a Wim Hof experience with a cold water immersion. And the instructor, and I've done a lot of cold therapy. I did a plunge an hour ago before getting ready for today's conversation. But the instructor was driving home this, when you're in the ice, you just have to surrender. You just have to let go. And there's so much strength that I believe that can be found in that. So I guess, Dawson, if we can, man, let's kind of go back here a little bit and maybe kind of your journey, because you opened it up there with, for 40 years, like you were this one way, one mentality, strength. You built an incredible career, but now it's kind of been on this other path. So can you kind of walk us through that journey of who you were into who it is you've become today?
Yeah, certainly is that, when I kind of started all this stuff is the biggest transition that I underwent onto this current path was when I was 38. This was 2016. And I'd reached a level of success in my professional career where I was doing investment banking for about 15 years at that point. And that's working 80 to 100 hours a week. I mean, just grinded, just on it. Like everything took a back seat. Like business was first, second, third, then everything else kind of mashed in there. I'd reached a level of success where I was comfortable. I was living in the Hollywood Hills and I could have what I want within reason and take trips and, buy this or buy that. But I was absolutely miserable. And from the outside, I think a lot of people could see me and say, oh, this guy's got his stuff together. But on the inside, there was a hole in me that had been there for decades and it just continued to grow. And I was very fortunate to where I've had a wonderful family, growing up and still to this day. I've got a great network of friends, but nobody knew the challenges I was facing internally, where they would see me and I'm out there doing what I'm doing. But then, there'd be days where I'm just in bed, literally just shaking. The thought of just turning and putting my feet on the floor, I was literally on the verge of tears. I was just in so much emotional, psychological pain. And it reached a point where I'd had enough. And I'd contemplated suicide, a couple times throughout, growing up, to reach that point. And I was very close, a couple times. I mean, I know what it feels like to stand there with a loaded gun to your head, with your finger on the trigger, taking out the slack. Like I've been there. And it just, at this stage, as my mother passed away, the serious girlfriend I was dating, we broke up. And I just reached that point where I made the decision of I'm either going all in or I'm going all out. Like I can't stay in this middle ground any longer. And because I know that no amount of physical goods is going to help me, get past this. Is I've got to make a serious change in my life. So at that point, I decided that I wasn't going to check out, that I was going to just devote everything. And I was either going to fix this thing or die trying. So with that is I went to Nepal, and I'd never been, on any type of expedition like that before. A friend of a friend told me about when he went to Everest Base Camp. At the time, I literally could not have found Everest on a map. I'm like, it's over there somewhere. And the thought of doing it just sounds terrible. It sounds stupid. Why would anybody want to climb a mountain? Like I couldn't relate to it. But long story short is I went to the Mount Everest region, and I hiked for 3 weeks, largely alone, around that region, and just spent every day. There's no cell phone, no music, no podcast. Like I just went off the grid and just every day, just read or, hiking around every night with just reading and journaling and writing. And, we can get into it more, but on that trip, that some of the things I experienced on that trip was just a breakdown and a breakthrough and enabled me to realize that I had no purpose in my life. That, just filling money into your bank account or filling up your garage or dating this or going here, that shit just doesn't matter, man. Once you have, your basic needs met. And what I realized was I had no purpose in my life and my life was only about me. That I inadvertently was living a very self-centered life. And again, there was definitely one particular instance, and we can get into it if you'd like to, but where I had, a physical and emotional like breakdown, like a break in my psyche. And it helped me to kind of see what was missing in my life. And that was purpose and service to others. And, as I came back from that trip, everything just kind of changed and I started to kind of get on this path. But and we can talk about it more, but what's interesting is a lot of people think once you start to find the right path, then it's just, daisy walks and gumdrops and Care Bears. It's just, and every day is an easy day. And that's very much not the right, attitude or not reality. Is once you're kind of on that path, it takes just as much, if not work, to stay on that path and to keep pushing on that thing every single day.
Yeah, that's kind of been the journey that we've been on here, and the mission behind this show with the Superman Life is, understanding we're all here for a purpose. That's my view here. That's as a man of God, as a man of faith, like I think God has created each and every single one of us with a purpose. There's a calling. There's something that Dawson is here to do. And I think you're walking that out right now, but it just doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop with knowing that there's a purpose. It's like, you got to be intentional about developing of that purpose, about developing of the skills, but then ultimately bringing it to the world in service of others, which is exactly what you're speaking to, right? It's like your purpose is found in the service of others. I'm curious because I think what you kind of shared there was like almost a rock top type of experience, right? We've had these multiple conversations and, it's unfortunately, but it's my thought that with a lot of guys, it takes rock bottom or rock top to kind of wake up, right? Rock bottom, it's like you have nothing. Maybe you've lost it all. Maybe you've reached a point where you're in your 30s and like there's nothing. There's no money in the bank account. You're sleeping. Maybe you've lost a home. You've lost a family. Rock bottom moments, right? We've had a lot of guys that had similar experiences to you, though. Chase all the success. The world told them it's going to be the money, the cars, the women, the bank account, the businesses that's going to create the happiness. But then to get to the top of the mountain, there's like, fuck, I'm still as unhappy as I was when I had nothing. So, Dawson, how do we get guys to kind of wake up in this middle here where it's not at the bottom, but it's also not at the top where you have to reach the ultimate success and then realize, shit, I'm actually here for a whole lot more.
Yeah. So look, I think that's a great question. I don't think I've ever looked at it quite in that light. So I really love the way you kind of put those two together. It's interesting because I think, look, like a lot of parts of life, there's very few times when it's truly black and white. Is that, because when I was at my rock top for financial means, is when I was at my rock bottom, at the same time inside and psychologically. So I think the biggest thing is for us to find a way to sit quietly with ourselves. And it's been said a lot of times by a lot of different people, the hardest thing for a person to do is to sit quietly with themselves. If you notice, normally, we get up and our alarm's on our phone, we turn the alarm off, then we start checking our phone, then we'll turn on a podcast, we'll turn on a television, then we'll start making coffee, then we'll read a paper. It's just, we're constantly inundated by exterior stimuli. And this level of connection, this increased level of connection we have these days to others, I think is lessening the connection that we have internally. So it's look, everybody, I don't care if you're Elon Musk or you or me or a coal miner in West Virginia, everybody can take a few minutes, like 10 minutes a day, and to sit quietly with themselves and to try to, kind of connect with themselves on a different level. And I think that's what it takes, is that when we're constantly inundated, there's so much noise, we can't hear ourselves and what we're trying to tell ourselves. And we love to believe that we're 95% conscious and maybe 5% subconscious, when it's the exact opposite. We're 95% subconscious. All these tens of thousands of thoughts that we experience every day is just the top 5% of what's going on beneath us. Well, how do we experience that? And I think the answer is to sit quietly with ourselves. And then we can start to get out in front of these things, these issues and challenges that we're facing, to where, to your point, we don't have to let them drive us down to a rock bottom or get to the mountaintop and realize the box there that we want to see that's full of the secrets is empty, is we can find a way to connect, before we reach either of those two extremes by just getting quietly and connecting with ourselves.
Yeah, I had this quote I share because what we're speaking about here is like a ongoing, reoccurring conversation, both in our coaching and in our community as well. We're serving guys that are trying to overcome a pornography addiction. It's a highly attention seeking thing, right? And a lot of them, they had this thought because they use porn when they feel alone, or they use porn when they're not really staying active. And a lot of them come in thinking like, if all I could do is stay busy, like I wouldn't have the problem. And it's like, no, that's actually not the goal of what we're shooting here, of what we're shooting at. There was a French philosopher in the 1700s, Pascal. He had a quote: "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit in his own thoughts." Like, this is 400 years ago. Like, they knew this to be true. Now, today's world, everything is grabbing and seeking our attention, right? Attention, like we're living in the attention economy. Like, think about the most valuable companies in the world. They sell attention. Facebook, Google, YouTube, Amazon, they're free platforms. Amazon's not the free platform, but all the other social media platforms are free to us because they're selling our attention to advertisers. So it's like, attention is the oil of like 100 years ago, right? So the biggest companies in the world are built off of people's attention. So I love that we're here. What is your daily practice routine that allows you to have that 10 minutes of just kind of focused, isolated time?
Yeah, I'm a very regimented person, when it comes to that. And so first thing I get up in the morning, the very first thing I do is take a cold shower. And I'd love to take a cold plunge, but I don't have one. I'm too cheap to buy one. So I just dial up, the cold water. It just, look, it's obviously not the same, but it's me doing something I don't want to do. First thing in the morning. That's the very first thing I do. And then after that is I go into a meditation. And that could, depending on how much time I have and, what the day looks like, that could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes. On average it's probably 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. Then I go into a stretching routine and like a pre-workout routine where my body warmed up, things like that. Cause normally it's, 4 or 5 days a week. I train twice a day, and I've got certain things like that. But it's just, that I think that's what it is from the beginning of the day is I'm setting the intention, and I'm letting my body know and my mind know that I'm not going to be acting on my feelings and emotions. I'm going to be acting on my values and my priorities. And I think that's a way that I can do that and exemplify that to myself. Look, at the same time as I am far, far from perfect. I screw up every single day where I let my feelings and emotions get away from me. I'm like, I should be doing this, but I don't feel like doing this, and that kind of thing. But just once you see yourself doing it, the key is not to just beat the shit out of yourself, but to see what you're doing and to just kind of get yourself moving back in that right direction by saying, hey, what's going to get me where I want to go? Feeling good here for a couple minutes, or doing something I know that's going to generate a long-term gain, not only for myself, but for others. And that's what I find helps me.
Yeah. When did that shift take place for you, Dawson? Because I think what you're speaking to now is like this concept of like the process goals versus the outcome-based goals. I don't know if you've ever read Atomic Habits by James Clear, but it does a beautiful job of kind of outlining like why so many people struggle to maybe find, success, but also the fulfillment in reaching their goals because it's so outcome driven. And I think that was you in the past, right? The business, the money, the success, the cars, it's like you're so focused externally. Whereas now it's like, it's like the routines of the day to day, the cold shower, the value in the meditation, like having these small things, like knowing that's leading me to the outcome, but I'm focused on the process. So like, where did that shift? I mean, was that the moment that you had there? Like when you were hiking the mountain that you kind of mentioned earlier, like, is that the wake up call? It's like, I've been so focused on the external. Like if I just focus on what I do daily, the external will come. So yeah, kind of like, what was that kind of wake up for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think mine was not quite as clear cut in the sense that, my focus generally has been on kind of what's in front of me in that daily grind. And yeah, I got the first, 200 reps of a workout, and I get the last 10 reps. And if I didn't, then was that workout worth anything? Am I worth anything? That kind of thing. But I think where I really started to see it is that, like we talked about earlier, once I'd achieved that level of financial success, I saw that it didn't mean anything to me. Yeah, I could pay my bills and I could go out and buy, whatever I wanted. But inside, I mean, when I say I was empty, I was effing empty. Like I couldn't feel anything besides pain, confusion, and frustration. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And then when I started doing, Project 7 for Soldiers, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which is part of Dawson's Peak Foundation, is, once I started seeing knocking down expeditions along the way, where we had maybe 7 or 8 or 9 successful expeditions all within a single year, but we couldn't complete the project as we intended because the North Pole got shut down because of Russia went into Ukraine. And then all of a sudden I looked at the entire project as a failure. I looked at myself as a failure. And I started examining these things. I'm like, you can't go back and retroactively, qualify or qualify your actions based on the results of them. And there's a great story that I love is that, there are 2 guys at the bottom of this snow-covered mountain. There's a young guy and an old guy. And the old guy says to the young guy, there's a box on top of the mountain. And, you ought to climb to the top and see what's in the box, learn all the secrets to life and the secrets to happiness or whatever. And the young guy gets all excited. He's putting on his crampons. He's about to start climbing. And just before he starts, the old guy says, "This lets you know the box is empty." And the young guy's like, "What the hell? Why are you telling me to climb this mountain to go see a damn empty box?" And the old guy says, "Because you need to see for yourself the box is empty." And that's what I've seen time and time again when I've gotten literally to the mountaintop and I've literally crossed the ocean. I literally crossed the deserts and I've seen all these boxes at the end. And every single time these things are empty. And it's from doing this stuff for years and years and years is that, like, you either have to understand the box is going to be empty or you're just going to drive yourself crazy. And I think that's the mentality I take into things now is if I can just perform to the best of my ability in every single moment, whether I'm successful or not is going to be whatever it is. I can't control that, but I can control my the work, my input and my intentions in every single moment. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah. What role, Dawson, do you think your success financially and career wise has maybe played in your ability to kind of have this perspective now, right? If you maybe been kind of like introduced to some of this, like in your 20s before all the success, if you hadn't had to go through your pitfalls, if you hadn't had to kind of go through your own depression and kind of struggles with the mental health and even the points of, contemplating suicide, like, do you think your perspective would be the same? Or do you see that now as like a major part of your story?
Yeah, no, I think it is a significant part of the story. I think a lot of times we think whatever is next is what's going to be is what's going to save us. And whether it's financial means, whether it's getting married, whether it's having kids, whether it's getting a job, whether it's moving here or moving there. But if we don't do that internal work, we're just going to be carrying the same old stuff with us whenever we achieve or obtain whatever it is, this next thing that we're looking at. And I think I had the ability to do that, not just with my career, but, it's like, whether it be going to school or dating whomever or whatever, it's, I was able to finally figure it out, literally, like I said, after decades and decades of doing the wrong things to understand that unless we have ourselves centered, all these, whatever that we add on to it is not going to mean what it means. And we're not going to be able to enjoy it the way that we can. And we're not going to be able to utilize it or take advantage of it. I don't mean in a negative way, I mean in a positive way. Like we can. Because if we're not in the right place, when we meet someone that might be the right person, we're not going to be able to participate like we should in that relationship or the right job or move into a new community or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. Talk to me about the story of Dawson's Peak, the launching of your nonprofit and charity organization. Like, was there an epiphany moment, an aha? Like, I mean, obviously, the wordsmith here with your name and everything, incredible, right? So, kind of walk us through the journey and tell us more about, what it is you guys are doing there.
Yeah, just quickly, the backstory was it really came about from that, I was talking earlier about that breakdown and breakthrough in Nepal, where I was a couple of days into my trip, climbing around the Mount Everest region. And I joined a service at a Buddhist monastery in this tiny village called Tengboche. It's the largest Buddhist monastery in that area. No roads. You walk in and you walk out. And for an hour, I sat alone in a room with about 10 chanting monks. And I just worked on just being as present as possible. And, midway through the service, these waves of energy were just enveloping me to the point where I was literally struggling to breathe. Like, I mean, I was like, I'd never experienced anything like it. And I never knew anything like that could experience, could exist. And after the service is I was walking across the village, and I know people have heard me tell the story, but I was walking across the village. There's a small stupa, which is a religious monument in the center of the village. I sit back and I lean against it. I'm looking right at Everest, which is still 4 or 5 days away. And the sun's, rising behind it, and the clouds are going across the front of it. I mean, this just looks like a movie. Like, this is why you come to this area. And out of nowhere, I just started bawling uncontrollably like a baby. At the time, I'm 40 pounds heavier than I am now. I was 242 pounds. I had a beard, down to here, this big old bushy beard. And I'm on my left side in the fetal position. I mean, just crushed in just so much agony, just physical, emotional agony, tears and snot just pouring out, rolling around in the dirt. And luckily, something inside of me said, don't try to fight this. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to rationalize it. Whatever this is, you just need to experience this. And that lasted for probably 10, 15 minutes. And I get up, I'm like, what the hell was that? I was like, this is crazy. I've never experienced anything like that. And I'm still shaking from it. And I walk into a little tea house where I was staying to have breakfast. I sit down, they bring me a bowl of oatmeal. I go take my first bite, and I just lose it again. And now I've got maybe 10 people around me, and I'm embarrassed. So I got my head, I'm covering my face, just bawling into this bowl of oatmeal. And I'm not kidding, as I cried so long and so hard, my tears were filling up that bowl of oatmeal. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, I raised my head and the room is just empty. These people are like, this guy is an effing nutcase. He's just crying everywhere. And I looked up into the back right corner of this room, and something spoke to me. And you can call it like a universal collective or God or subconscious, some type of, unconscious force, energy, whatever. And it said two things. It said, you're not living with a sense of purpose, and your life is only about you. And when I heard it, I didn't hear it with my ears. I heard it with my heart. I heard it with every fiber and cell of every version of myself I'd ever been or could possibly ever be. And in that moment, I knew what my purpose was, and that's to help others to avoid that pain and confusion and frustration that I faced alone for so many years, because I know that darkness. I know being on the verge of suicide. I know these things, and I want to help people avoid being in that place that I was alone for so long. But after that, it took, like we said earlier about being on the path, it took a long time to kind of put everything in place to get to Dawson's Peak Foundation, Project 7 for Soldiers. It literally took another 2.5 years of kind of working and traveling and trying to figure out how we can do something. And ultimately what we decided, a friend of mine, Jay Jablonski, and I are working on this together, that let's start an organization where our mission is to inspire the discovery and pursuit of individual purpose, to get people to understand that our lives have purpose. We're here for a reason, and to move from being self-centered to service-centered. And said, maybe the way we can do it is start an organization where we sponsor athletes. We put on large-scale global expeditions where the athletes are pushing the boundaries of human capability, and viewers can watch the athletes and then draw a parallel between themselves and the athlete to say, hey, if this man or woman's doing, climbing a mountain or rowing an ocean or running here, or doing, whatever, I can find something comparable in my life that I never thought I could accomplish. Whether it's making the move, whether it's, a new job, whether it's walking away from a relationship, whatever it is, if they can do this, I can do that, in my life. And that's how, the project got started. And our first project is called 7 for Soldiers, where I've been, the kind of the guinea pig athlete. And the plan was to set 7 world records in 12 months, from May 23rd, 2021 until May 22nd, 2022. We ultimately ended up setting 5 records, during that time. And I've set, 6 record, as of this May. We can get into that, but that's kind of how everything got started. But last thing I'll say is to exemplify kind of being that service-centered organization, we paired up with Gary Sinise Foundation and Hope for the Warriors, which are 2 of the highest rated veteran charities in the country, where they're receiving 100% of the net proceeds that we raise. So since starting this, I haven't made a dime. The organization hasn't made a dime. All the net proceeds have gotten donated to those 2 groups.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, man. And thank you for the work that you're doing we're recording this, on Veterans Day here. And, I've shared my heart and passion. We've had 24 episodes with, armed service veterans, and many of them are some of my best friends in the world. So yeah, such a need there in the world, because I'm sure you and I would agree, they're not being taken care of to the degree that they deserve to be. So I think having organizations like yours that are putting them first is so crucial and so important. Um, Dawson, would you describe yourself as a man of faith? Do you have a relationship with God in any capacity?
And so I was raised Catholic. And so I went to, Catholic school and did all that through maybe third, fourth grade. In high school, I became an atheist. And that's, kind of where I am today, is that I certainly believe that there is a higher power in the sense that we're all connected to something. We're all connected in some way. What that looks like in the organization and the label of it, I'm not exactly sure. So that's kind of where I fall.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Cause as you're speaking, it's like, I'm hearing these, like with purpose, and it's just language that, I think is hard to have and believe if you think that all of this is just kind of by accident, right? That, it's just, rocks crushed and now we're here. So I appreciate you, allowing me to ask that question. Earn, give, live your life. Talk to me about the concept behind how this applies to what we do.
Yeah, it's, we tried to just simplify who we are as an organization and what we do. Because we talk about, hey, we've got an organization, then we do this, and then we're going to put on an event that has 12 events inside of it. Then we're going to donate money to these two charities. There's a lot going on. So we're trying to think, how can we simplify our message? And we came up with earn, give, live your life. It's a trademark term we have. And essentially it just kind of breaks down, what we do and how we do it. And, what we found is worked in our lives to create, more success than we had before, where earn is that self-centered element of, you earn your life by connecting with yourself, understanding your motivators and drivers, and working through your challenges, things like that, doing the meditations and the journaling and the counseling and all this kind of stuff. You give your life, where that's that transition from being self-centered to service-centered, where you make your life about more than yourself and understand the impact you're going to have on your community and even those outside of your community. And then finally, living your life is the combination of earning and giving, where you get out there and you're pushing yourself, you're trying to grow on a daily basis. I think that we lose that too often in today's society of how necessary it is for us to grow, not only for ourselves, but for others. I think far too often people are just kind of playing it so close to the vest and wanting to just make sure their mortgage is covered or have a couple kids it's like all these just societal checkpoints. But then you check in with yourself. You're like, how have I pushed myself? How have I grown as an individual? How can I, what does my life look like? What do I want my life to look like? And that's kind of the living element of it. It's just forcing yourself into this, continuous stage of growth, after you kind of earn and give your life.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And, I have an opportunity to coach and mentor, a lot of young men and a lot of men that are the same age. And, we've had many guys that are older than me. I mean, we've had guys in our programs that are old enough to be my father. And, so I have this unique perspective with men, how they are living in the world, understanding of purpose. And, as we've been speaking today about having purpose and knowing that we all do have purpose, I think men, in my opinion, go through these stages. The purpose of your life when you're in your 20s is not going to be the same purpose when you're in your 40s or 50s. Yes, it should always be focused around the service of others, but it's like, as a young 20-year-old man, like, you got to build some skills. You got to build your own capabilities up first. Like, I think Jordan Peterson, one of his rules and 12 rules for life is like, clean up your own house before you try to go out there and change the world. And I've seen too many men try to go change the world while their house isn't in order. So I'm curious, just kind of your thoughts on like our purpose. Does it kind of evolve, and kind of like, what's that progression as we go from our 20s into our 30s, 40s, and then beyond?
No, look, I'm a fan of Jordan in a lot of cases. So, and I know what you're talking about. And I think that's a wonderful way of putting it. And I love how you kind of put all that. And I think it's an interesting question that's not discussed enough. It's kind of that adage of, do what I say, not what I do. And that's when people are going out there thinking that they're going to make the world a better place by changing someone else's actions rather than focusing on their own actions. And I think that early on, to your point, it's better for people to work on their own house, is their own, getting connected with themselves, building their skill sets, building their education, building their network and their community, and really kind of starting on that interpersonal level and then kind of that grassroots level and growing it out. But I think that, like we talked about earlier, a lot of times life is not this cut and dry thing where it has to be this or this. It's not binary. We can do different things. So even while we're doing that, we can still understand, how we impact others, how we can be of service to others. And then to your point is, which I think again was a great one, is as we kind of start to emerge and grow into life and our capabilities and our capacities and our resources grow, and now our circle of influence grows, not just our circle of concern, but our circle of influence. Now we can kind of focus more on, influencing the things that we can, but at the same time, not losing that personal connection and always making sure we're making time to come back and check in with ourselves to make sure we're doing the right things for the right reasons.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Let's talk about some of your world records, man. I mean, I think we've had maybe one or two world record holders on. Nobody that holds 6 here. So how did you get into? I mean, you shared kind of how you got into it, but of the 6, which one was the most difficult? Maybe holds the most meaning.
Yeah, it's the way the records came about was there's one freestanding, which I'll tell you about, but the rest of them is a comment how you combine different activities. So the records include climbing the highest peak on each continent, which is known as the Seven Summits, skiing to the South Pole, then rowing a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, and then finally trekking solo and unsupported across the Mojave Desert. So I was able to accomplish all those things in a single 12-month period. I'd also planned on getting to the North Pole during that time, and everything was scheduled. I was ready. Had been 100% successful. Then Russia goes into Ukraine, and the pole gets canceled. So we lost that one. And if I would have gotten that would have been what's called the Explorers Grand Slam, where I'd have been only the 4th person to ever do that in a single year. And then our flight got canceled because of Russia, Ukraine, and COVID. So essentially, just kind of how you mash those together, creates all the world records. The one that was probably the most difficult in a freestanding sense is the one that stands by itself, where in May of this year, in March of this year, no, May, I'm sorry. In May of this year is I became the fastest person to ever cross the Mojave Desert on foot, in any means, whatsoever, supported or unsupported. I did it in an unsupported sense. So this was my second full crossing of the Mojave. The first one was 213 miles. This one was just under 330 miles. Just 329 to change. It took 7 days, 8 hours and 45 minutes. But again, solo unsupported. I was moving for a little over 20 hours a day, sleeping for a little less than 3 hours a night, and just, fully on my own. Nobody was with me, no contact, no nothing with anybody. And that one was probably the most difficult just because of, the distance is that literally once I started the clock is there was no break. There was no time off. Every single second was accounted for, and sitting there trying to eat. I'm like, okay, I've got 2 minutes. I've got 1 minute. I'm like, it's go time. I'm like, I'm not done. I'm like, well, too bad. Cause we got to start moving. Or, you try to go to sleep and I lay down. I'm like, okay, I've got 2 hours and 50 minutes. And I'm like, okay, 2 hours and 49 minutes. Okay. 2 hours, 48 minutes. This constant pressure. And then it got to a point where I experienced what's called the third man factor, where in the last 72 miles was a 36-hour straight push with no sleep. And I think I stopped maybe 3 times in that 36 hours. And I literally had this, and I haven't really talked about this before with people, but I had this presence, kind of come about me or come around me rather. And is a female presence. And she helped to guide me. And it was the most comforting feeling I've ever felt. It was very strange. And I knew that someone was there with me. Then all of a sudden, I'm trekking, I'm seeing the world through my eyes, but all of a sudden I'm floating above myself about 200 feet. I'm also seeing the world through those eyes. And it's like this weird combination of the two. And this female voice was telling me I was going so slow and I was running out of food. I was running out of water. And when I finished, I hadn't had food in hours. I hadn't have a drop of water in hours. Like I was bone dry of everything. And this voice, this presence told me, get off this trail you're on right now, get over here out in the wilderness. And I'm like, I've never been here before. I don't know. I've got GPS, whatever. She's like, just trust me. And I'm telling you, I veered off about a half mile and just started bushwhacking my way and made better progress. I was moving up. My body felt like everything felt better. My vision increased. It was wild, man. And that was all part of that longer crossing.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Wow. What an experience. I mean, just in you describing, I couldn't imagine being there and having gone through that. Now you were a high level athlete growing up. I read that you even had a shot at making it into the NFL.
Yeah. So I grew up playing high school football, like a lot of guys do in Alabama, and, baseball and track. Played ball at Naval Academy. I was there for a year where I played quarterback, transferred again in Pennsylvania where I was strong safety. But between the two, I had to have what's called bilateral compartmental syndrome release surgery. So I had just a lot of pressure built up in both my calves from so much exercise. My calves got so big that, sounds like a good problem to have, but it was horrendous. Where, my foot would drop and I couldn't pick it up. I literally couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. Like I couldn't walk up 5 steps. And so I had surgery, and that really sidelined me for several years. And took me probably 4 years to get my speed and power back. And by that point, I started training in Dallas after college, and I had a couple of contract offers, was put on waivers, invited to camps, stuff like that. And by the time I finally had a couple of offers, I was in my, I was like 23, 24, and I just kind of had enough of it. And I knew that it wasn't my path. Maybe I could make it for a few years, but I wanted to get started on a better path for me. So I decided to finally walk away.
Yeah. I came up in the bodybuilding community, spent about a decade competing, and 2 big calves is never a phrase that comes out of a bodybuilder's mouth. But obviously I understand with the medical conditions there, it's something completely different. How has, this journey that you've been on, has been around some of the greatest athletes, high level athletes your entire life in your early, 20s, and then having a shot at the league, right? Best athletes in the world there, right? But now what you're doing, I think probably shows like humans are capable of maybe so much more. So how's it kind of change your perspective on like what the human body is even capable of?
Oh man, that's a great question. And I don't think anybody's asked me that. I love that with your background, your brain goes there. And it's been tremendous to see that. Is my entire life, I was a strength and power athlete. Is my, anything over 100, maybe 200 yards, I'm like, that's long distance. And I don't, it's like, I don't do it. It was just explosiveness and raw power and strength. So when I first started to train I couldn't have run 400 meters. Run a mile was just like, that's like a marathon to me. And I hired a coaching group, and I did a test, and they're like, listen, you've got aerobic deficiency syndrome, which is very common among strength and power athletes that just we have no aerobic capacity whatsoever. So when I first started training all this stuff I started at the very bottom of just going out and walking for an hour and then walking for 2 hours. And it just very slowly built it up. And once I started building it up is probably much like yourself, is my approach to athletics was always just dominance, raw power and aggression. And I'm going to break, or I'm going to break whatever's in front of me. And I was like, I'm going to train till I absolute break until I achieve what I'm trying to achieve. And because of that, I used to have all these injuries when I first started training for endurance. Like I continuously was injured or constantly injured, to the point where my coaching company said, listen, we don't think you need we don't think you can achieve what you're trying to achieve. And basically we're not going to support you any longer. And we think you need to change whatever your goals are, because you can't do it. Maybe you can, but in our professional opinion, you can't do this. And I'm like, to hear that from somebody that you're paying to work with, it's crazy. But it's taken me years and years and years. And now finally I'm at really the peak of my cardiovascular endurance performance capabilities. But when I try to maintain as much strength as I can, but when I go into the gym now, my body is transformed physically, because a lot of the fast twitch muscle fibers have transformed into slow twitch muscle fibers. So before I climbed Aconcagua in 2017, I squatted 405 for 17 reps, which is pretty good. And I'll go in, I'll hit 405 for 4 or 5 reps, and I'm getting squashed. And I've got and I can feel I have no pop anymore. Like that explosiveness is not there. But at the same time, I can do a workout where I do 1,500, 1,600 reps of single leg stuff, and I can do it. And before, when I was so strong, I couldn't do anything like that. So it's like, you see your body can have these just two crazy extremes.
Yeah. What was that? This is selfishly for me here, Dawson. So I hope everybody's okay with me asking. What was that kind of timetable like for you? Right. Because I stopped like competitive bodybuilding in 2017. I still train though, very similar, with way less volume, way less intensity, but I'm just immediate. I picked up Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding when I was 15 years old, and that's what shaped my whole perspective on being in the gym. So I've always been somebody that's hypertrophy based focused. knowing guys like you though, and I have other friends that are out there that are really diving into these extreme, adventure stuff, and they're doing these ultra marathons. And I'm like, man, there's this limiting belief that I'm not that person. But then I see people that have gone through transitions like yourself, and it's like, I know it can be done. I know it's possible, but then there's that limiting belief that it's not possible for me. So what was the kind of journey for you, and what was a time frame on like going from that max effort guy to now it's all about the endurance?
Yeah. Again, I keep saying this, but I think that was a great question. I'm really enjoying, kind of where you're taking these things and the different elements of it. So when I first started to train for the endurance was August 1st, 2018. And I had exactly 18 months to get ready for the North Pole and Everest and all this kind of stuff. But unfortunately, that's right when COVID hit. So everything kind of got shut down. So the quick answer to your question is roughly 18 months. I was able to go from that strength and power to being in a position where I felt I could go to the North Pole and go to Everest and go to Denali and do all these things. 18 months was roughly it. But since that time is that, my capabilities and my capacity from a endurance standpoint, it just grown exponentially. And one thing for people to keep in mind is it's far easier and faster to increase your physical strength than it is your cardiovascular endurance. Physical strength, you can see every week you're putting on, 2 more pounds in the bar, or 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever it is. But cardiovascular endurance, it can take weeks and months to slowly build that base, especially when you're an old fart like I was. We don't get started until you're 37, 38 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 41 now, and about 18 months ago, I hired a coach. I was going to train, and I was going to do a half marathon. We had about 6 weeks into it. I was doing the running, but the ego in me, maybe it was, or I have no clue what it was. Like, I wasn't willing to give up like a lot of the bodybuilding training. So 6 weeks into it, I pushed everything too far and ended up getting hurt, and I had to pull it back. And I've kind of been afraid. Once again, I'm exposing a lot about myself here to jump back in, but maybe this is a challenging conversation I needed to have to really kind of surrender and let things go and just go all in on something.
I love you brought that up. And here's one thing to keep in mind is when I first started this, again, I was 242 pounds and I was 17% body fat. So, I mean, I had some chunk on me, but I wasn't big. And I was the strongest I'd ever been. And I love going in the gym, and I love putting weight on my back and seeing the bar bend. And I love picking up heavy shit. I love moving steel, and I always have, like, I think you and I are probably similar. As I started working out when I was 14 or 15 at a Gold's Gym, where I'd go there for 3 or 4 hours. I'm just like, what am I doing today? Everything in here. And I did that every day. That was my workout. But to go from that 242 down to 202, which is, I normally sit, 200, 202 right now. And even to this day, I hate to say it, but I'll be totally honest with you, it's still kind of an assault on my ego. Cause I'll see myself in the mirror. I'm like, who's the guy wearing the medium shirt over here?
Yeah, right.
And I go in the gym and I'm getting squat, I'm doing like 315 for a couple reps on squat. And I'm like, Jesus, this is heavy. Before I would warm up and I'm like, who is this little guy in the squat rack? But then you have to just tell yourself, hey, or ask yourself, what are your priorities? It's what do you want out of your life, and what do you want this? And it's understanding, Tom, to what we said earlier is it's so critical not to tie ourselves into, hey, I'm this one thing that does one thing, is to give ourselves that fluidity to be different things throughout our life. And look, the funny thing is I never thought I would enjoy endurance the way that I do. And maybe if you got into it even more, you might have this kind of transition. You're like, look, I love weights. I love training. I love being a big guy and hypertrophy, but I'm at a stage in my life where this is really interesting to me. And I'm willing to make some sacrifices to pursue this a little bit more. You never know.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. Our backgrounds and probably our physiques are very, very similar. I'm 6'3", about 245, probably 15% right now. So yeah, probably very, very similar build and structure.
It's funny. Like when I was growing up, to me, that was the ideal. I was like, if I get 6'3", 6'4", 240, that was my goal. And
that was the Arnold, the pumping iron classic look, man. That was it, bro. Yeah. I mean, I had the posters in the garage. I still got the posters downstairs in the garage. That's what I've chased my whole life. Curious what obviously you're running your nonprofits, you're speaking, you're doing the books. Coming from this background though, M&A, merger and acquisitions, working 80, 100 hours a week, there's something probably inside of you that almost kind of thrives in those type of environments. So what does like business and stuff kind of look like for you these days?
Yeah, it's so with the banking is I'm still a managing director at an investment bank here in LA. So I do that on a project by project basis, meaning that if I have the time and a deal comes in that I want to work on, then I can take it on and either run the entire thing or just participate in certain elements of it, just because I enjoy staying active and keep my mind working in that way. But it's with the the bigger the goal you're trying to accomplish, the less kind of balance you have in your life. And everybody manages things a little bit differently. And, most things in my life have taken a back seat to training and to the organization. And then to your point, the speaking and the book that I have coming out on January 7th, to where that's by far the priority of my life. To where, then that's probably 95% of my time. So it's, very little time with friends and family and dinners and vacations and nights out. Like that just, it very rarely exists in my world anymore, but I'm at a place now where I understand what I want to accomplish or try to accomplish. I understand the price of it. I'm willing to pay that price in order to try to accomplish it. And I've come to terms with that. And that's what I want.
Yeah, no, because there's purpose and meaning there, and that's what drives you. Talk to us about the book, Strength and Surrender. You just dropped it here, launching on January 7th. So this will be, obviously come out a little bit before that, guys. But yeah, tell us about the book, kind of, the genesis story behind it, and what it's, what it's kind of designed to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. Thank you. So yeah, January 7th, 2025, the first book that I've written, Strength and Surrender. And really I tried to make this thing a complete experience of what I've gone through, of both my personal transformation, my early adolescence. You kind of see how I grew up and the challenges I faced and how those challenges, came back around several times throughout my life and created a lot of the issues that I continue to still, to face to this day. But it's also about, founding the charity, all the expeditions. So if someone wants to learn about, climbing Everest or Denali or rowing the Atlantic Ocean or skiing to the South Pole or how heavy the pack was and how cold the mountain was and I couldn't feel my fingers and all that stuff's in there. But, if you're like me before this all got started, where I couldn't give a shit less about climbing a mountain, then, the underlying story is about all of us. It's about how we all face challenges. In there, there's not only the narrative of everything that I went through, but also lessons that I think are applicable to all of us, and they're intermixed throughout every single chapter, throughout the narrative. At the end of every chapter, nearly every chapter, is a section called meditation, which are my main principles that I use to guide my life that I learned from Strength and Surrender. There's also sections of ask yourself and apply yourself, where you can take what you've read, ask yourself, just direct questions, and then apply it directly to your life. And then also there's my personal journals that I kept on the expeditions that I never thought would be published. These are very raw, a lot of colorful language, a lot of I'm scared right now, like I can't this and that, all this kind of stuff. And then I'm sorry I'm throwing a lot at you here, but lastly, there's artwork that was created one-off for the book, where it's very kind of visceral stuff, where I wanted people to see the artwork and to move them in a way to where it opens them up to where they can receive the information in a different way, not just through their minds, but through their hearts. And I think hopefully we've accomplished that. But, I think you and I were talking before we started. The ebook is now available on pre-order on Amazon. We just released that. We've already hit #1 Amazon new release. So we're having a lot of, great response so far.
Yeah, no, incredible, guys. We'll have the book for pre-order link down there below. And if you're catching this after January 7th, obviously you can go pick up the copy, the ebook version. Will there be an audio as well?
Yeah, so there'll be an audio. So as of January 7th, there'll be an ebook, audio, and paperback, all available on Amazon. Is the easiest way to get it.
Amazing. Matt Dawson, this has been incredible, man. I appreciate your realness, your rawness, your vulnerability, your willingness to allow me to take this all over the place, which I think I kind of told you I was going to do before, but hopefully it was meaningful and valuable to you. And I know the audience is going to get a lot of this as well. I think we have a lot of guys that obviously resonate with you and your story and everything that you're doing. So tell the guys where they can connect with you, where you're hanging out, socially, online, obviously not, don't want to, have them show up in your social life, but yeah, where can they connect with you more? Obviously we'll link up the book and then we'll wrap it up with our last and final question here.
Yeah, no, first is I sincerely appreciate you having me on, taking the time to have me like we talked about is I had a chance to read about you beforehand. So I've really been looking forward to this and I've really enjoyed the questions and the way that you think about it. So thank you very much. The easiest thing to do is just, my personal website is Dawson's Peak. peak.com. That links to our charity website as well. So you can learn all about me, about the foundation. Also, you can donate to Gary Steve's Foundation, Hope for the Warriors, through that site. Or if it's easier, there's a text to donate where you just text Dawson, DAWSON, to 53555. And again, Gary Steve's Foundation, Hope for the Warriors, are getting 100% of those net proceeds. I'm not making anything on it. And then Instagram is just at Dawson's Peak. And then that links to everything else.
Incredible. Guys, we'll have all that linked down there. Dawson's, has been an absolute honor, man. I've really enjoyed this. Looking forward to grabbing a copy of the book once it's out. But as we wrap it up here, title of the show is called The Superhuman Life. And I love to always get the same question answered from all of our guests. I kind of shared with you, kind of our mission and kind of what superhuman life means to me. But as we wrap up today's conversation, Dawson, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. That's a good one to finish it up with. I think the superhuman life is understanding why we're here. And I think we're here to live with purpose and apply that purpose to elevate others. And then secondly, to grow and to continuously push ourselves in that manner, to continue to show up every day, to understand about why we're doing what we're doing, and to, continuously push ourselves outside those comfort zones. And, kind of whatever that means to you. I'd say anybody that's doing that, whether you're winning Super Bowls or whether you're, digging coal somewhere or whatever, I think that's how, you live that life.
Yeah, no, find meaning and purpose in the work that's presented in front of you is so key and crucial. But beyond this continuous path of growth and service, a service-oriented life is one that's going to lead you to fulfillment. So I would second all of what you shared there. So guys, connect with Dawson's Peak, pick up the book, Strength and Surrender, out on pre-order right now. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, share this episode with as many people as possible. Help us grow this mission to help us get Dawson's message out there to the world. But Matt, brother, it's been an absolute honor. Looking forward to staying in touch with you, man. Guys, we love you, and we will see you next week.